Chair Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer, Councilmember Ottenberg, Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Galani. All right, thank you. It appears we have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Takes us to the approval of minutes. Next item on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our May 17th meeting. Made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Clark. Is there any questions or anything anybody wants to ask about the minutes? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain. I don't think I was there last time. Thanks.
Okay.
Abstain.
Councilmember Deborah and Dan have abstained. Okay. All right. Thank you. That takes us to the public input part. I think we do have somebody that I got an email that somebody wanted to. Yes, there we go. So Steve or Melanie, can you promote, I guess, Krista? From what I understand, she wants to talk about the progress they're making at Bellevue Farms. So
There we go.
there
Hi.
we go. Hello, we can see you and we can hear you. So go ahead.
Is it possible for me to share my screen? I have a PowerPoint.
I'm sure that is possible. I'm probably not the person that knows how to do that.
Just want to know. if it's-
Travis?
Yes,
Did
Mr.
you-
Chair, they technologically speaking, they have the capability to share their screen.
Okay.
All right. There we go.
Oh, wonderful.
So let's go to, or let me go down here. I'm trying to, oh, there we go. Slideshow. All right.
And before you get started, and I apologize for interrupting, but just for the record, if you could state your name and address, please.
Sure. My name is Krista Taves. I'm at 1470 St. Paul Road, Baldwin, Missouri.
And I'm Laurie Meacham, 1470 St. Paul Road, Baldwin, Missouri.
And I'm the president of Friends of Bellevue, and Lori is our grant writer,
I don't
researcher,
know.
and
Worker.
worker.
Worker bee.
So we just want to do a quick presentation on Friends of Bellevue and Bellevue Farm Park, because I know that you have updates from us and what we're doing, but we just wanted to share with you what we've been up to and what we've accomplished so far. So this is just a short presentation. So this is a picture of Bellevue Farm. You can see the gorgeous hill in the background, and that is that stunning view that we have. So the background of this is that Harold Donnelly, who was an environmentalist and founding member of Open Space Council St. Louis, he purchased Bellevue Farm in the late 1990s, and it's located at the heart of the former town of Sherman, where we live, which is unincorporated St. Louis County. And he engaged in restoration work, and he opened the property to nature enthusiasts. In fact, the little square buildings were bunkhouses where he would allow people to stay overnight if they wanted to do retreats on his property. And he wrote a deed in which he gave the Bellevue Farm to St. Louis County upon his death on the condition that it remain a wildlife and nature preserve. And in 1998, St. Louis County obtained the land. And they didn't open it. They didn't do anything with it. And then in 2013, Wildwood assumed control of the park. And in 2018, Sherman residents shared their hopes for Bellevue with Wildwood. And it's a long, complicated story that some of you are part of. But we were very happy to, in 2019, we formed a 501c3. We're now a nonprofit corporation, and our purpose is to support Bellevue Farm Park. And we started out being just really Sherman residents, but we have grown beyond Sherman, and we've expanded our board of directors. We're partnering with other organizations, and we're building a strong volunteer base. So our mission is to protect Bellevue Farm Park as a wildlife and nature preserve, to restore Bellevue to a natural state, and to share Bellevue with the public. And our goals are to clear the invasive plants and trees on the property. There is a lot of invasives on the property. Replant native species as needed. Restore and protect the springs and cave. Install and improve and maintain habitats for wildlife, especially those that are endangered or otherwise species of concern. And to establish Bellevue Farm Park as an educational resource for the community. So those are our goals for this park. And we've discussed these goals with Joe Vunich at several meetings. So these are well known to him. So we have developed a lot of partnerships. The picture you see is one of our work days with Open Space Council of St. Louis. That was one of our biggest work days. We had 40 volunteers that day. It was a pretty amazing day. But you're our first partners, of course, the City of Wildwood, because you have control of Bellevue Farm Park. And we've worked a lot with Joe Vunich. We've had many productive meetings, and I think we have a really good relationship with him. And our point person was also Gary Cruz, the park superintendent. We had a great relationship with him, and we're looking forward to building a relationship with his successor when that successor is chosen. And our second partner is the Missouri Department of Conservation. We've had multiple site visits and professional guidance, and the MDC now designates Bellevue as one of their priority properties. That means that they will continue to provide professional support for the park, and we are also identified for receiving grants. So we've actually got quite a few grants already, and we're hoping that there will be more.
And so that a priority property is whenever there's a cost share grant, that means that they will pay 75% of the cost and we have to come up with 25%. Usually with landowners and other groups, whoever they're working with, if it's not a priority, MDC will pay 25 to 40% of the costs. And so we are the priority, and so they will fund us up to 75%.
Right. So to date, there are 3 completed grants, 3 that were proposed by us and 1 that was proposed by Wildwood. And the 4th one, we just were offered a 4th one last summer, a 75-25 cost share grant for woodland invasives removal and tree stand improvement. Our other partner is Open Space Council of St. Louis. We contacted them, and they, because of our shared connection with Harold Donnelly, who is a founder of Open Space Council and a board member for many years, Open Space Council has identified Bellevue Farm Park as a project property now. And so we've co-hosted 2 work parties with more to come. And Open Space Council also supports local environmental organizations, so they've offered staff support to help us establish stronger community connections, grow our volunteer base, and strengthen our communications. And last but certainly not least are the Confluence and Master Rivers Master Naturalist chapters. We've received considerable guidance and support from these 2 chapters. We received support in developing our mission and goals, and many members volunteer at our monthly work days. We are also a project property for the Confluence Master Naturalist chapter. So what we've accomplished since we incorporated. So in June of 2019, we incorporated, and then we worked with Joe for a while to establish an agreement for how we would have access to the property, and that was in place by spring of 2020, and we got to work. So in spring of 2020, we cleared 3 acres of honeysuckle. We planted milkweed in the back meadow, and that's when we secured our first $25,000 MDC grant to clear 20 acres of woodland. And in winter 2021, that 20 acres was professionally cleared of invasives. Then we received a second $6,000 cost share MDC grant for tree stand improvement. And tree stand improvement means that you go in and you thin out the woods. The woods here at Bellevue Farm, and most woods left naturally by now because of so many invasives, are too dense. So there's not enough sunlight getting to the forest floor, and there's not enough opportunity for smaller trees to sprout and other forbs and flowers and things to come up in the woods. So tree stand improvement really helps set up a woodland for its own restoration. It can do its own restoration. And that TSI was also completed that winter for the 20 acres that were cleared of invasives. Then in winter 2021, winter 2021, it was professionally cleared, and that's when we were established as a priority property by the MDC. We worked very closely with them. They were very impressed with the land. It's a very unique piece of property, and they thought that we were a strong partner, and that Wildwood was also a strong partner. So together we became a priority property. And then in spring 2021, you all secured a third grant, and that Gary Cruz submitted that grant. It was another $25,000 MDC grant to restore 5 acres of prairie. And that spring, we also cleared 2 acres of honeysuckle.
Tell them where we're at with the prairie.
Where we're at with the prairie is that it was chemically treated in the fall of
Yes.
2021.
One.
And then retreated, and then it was planted this winter. And so now it is having its first year of growth.
Yes.
Anything else about that?
I don't think so.
Okay. So then the last thing we did in the summer of 2021 is that we, with the Confluence and Great Rivers chapters, we established the Harold Darling Memorial Garden as a showcase native garden. Now, we had sent in a grant to the Missouri Prairie Foundation for money for that garden, and we were not successful in getting that money, so we turned to the Master Naturalist chapters, and they put up the call and donated all of the seedlings. And we had a fantastic work day where we put in that garden. And then in summer of 2021 is when the MDC offered Friends of Bellevue the 75-25 cost share grant for invasive removal and tree stand improvement. And so it was a 75-25 cost share grant. And so their share would be $25,000 and our share would have been $8,400. And we would have had to front the entire thing and they would have reimbursed us. So we started working on how we might be able to make that happen. And this would clear another estimated 15 to 17 acres of the most heavily infested. So then in the fall 2021, we planted several hundred milkweed by the back pond. That was all donated by the Master Naturalist and the MDC. Then we realized we weren't able to, we did not have the capacity to accept this cost share grant. It was just too much. We're a small organization, and we're really happy if we can cover all the insurances and the cost of the supplies for the workday. So that's where, that's about our capacity at this time, although it can certainly grow. So we turned to Joe and we handed this grant possibility over to Wildwood to see if Wildwood could participate and we could secure that grant. So that's what we did in the fall of 2021. And so then it went over to you all. And then in the fall, we held our first fall festival. It was our first big fundraiser. And in the last fall, Open Space Council adopted us as a project property. Then in the fall of 2021 and the winter of 2022, we had 6 work parties with volunteers from Sherman, Open Space Council, Confluence and Great Rivers Master Naturalist chapters, the college school, and the surrounding community, putting in hundreds of hours. And we had about 90 to 100 volunteers who participated this winter on this park. And we also began planting trees and shrubs to restore a riparian buffer. There's a creek that runs west of the driveway. And when we remove the honeysuckle from that area, what often happens is it causes erosion because the root system of the honeysuckle was holding things together. So we were able to get trees from Missouri Forest Relief. And we planted this riparian buffer in the spring of this year. And then in the spring of 2022, what we've just started is that we're now starting to maintain the original 20 cleared acres. So when Wildwood and us agreed to take that first grant for $25,000, we made a commitment of 15 years to maintain that original 20 cleared acres. So we've been walking those woods and we've been treating any honeysuckle that has grown since the first clearing. So what are our goals going forward? We're going to continue invasive removal. We're going to continue the riparian.
Krista, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
So we're pretty lax on the committee meetings, but we do have a 5-minute
Okay.
kind of time limit for public participation. So can you I'll give you can you wrap it up in a minute?
Actually, I've got 30 seconds left.
Perfect. You're even
Okay,
better.
so we're going to
Thank you.
continue the invasive removal. We're going to continue the riparian buffer restoration, especially by the 2 springs. We're going to keep pursuing partners, especially to restore and secure the cave on the property. We're going to continue planting natives. We're going to continue working with the MDC, and we're going to continue growing our volunteer base. And I'll leave you with a few pictures. This is the riparian restoration we did this spring. Here's a before and after of the work that we've done. So you can see what the forest looks like when it's all filled with honeysuckle. You can see what it looks like after. So we're creating more and more of this after every season. And there's the massive piles of honeysuckle that are left after we do our work. And that's it.
All right, Krista and Laurie, thank you so much.
Thank
What a
you.
great presentation, and thank you for all the work you're doing, especially.
Thank you. And we'll-
Thank you very
I
much.
just actually can see the progress you're making, and I'm sure it's
Thank
very
you.
rewarding.
And we'll send you our notes so we can share those with the committee.
We thank you, and we'll share it with the rest of the council
Okay.
as well.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. So Travis, do you see is there anybody else for public participation? I don't see any other names.
No, sir, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so that just takes us to the action items. We have 3 planning matters and 7 park matters. I will remind everybody that if you do want to speak, please use the raise hand feature. That helps me out quite a bit. The first item we have under planning matters is the further information and discussion on the Hometown Heroes banner program. Melanie, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, as discussed at the previous meeting, the Hometown Heroes program is designed to recognize Wildwood's veterans and active military members by featuring veterans on banners on light standards along designated roadways. At the committee's direction from the last meeting, the department further researched the program, how it's administered in other cities, and is offering suggestions this evening on how it could be best administered in Wildwood. When setting up the program, it's important to take into consideration things such as design, location, time of display, and the associated costs. The department looked into the design of the banners, and there are programs that provide templates for cities that I included some in the packet. And the city can send them essentially an Excel spreadsheet and photographs of the veterans, and they would do all of the input into each banner and then send us proofs to approve. Many cities also design their own banners. I'm looking further into this because it may require city staff to input each individual banner with the information provided, which would take up more staff time. However, looking at the templates, the department felt that they didn't have the Wildwood feel about them. And so if they could possibly be altered, or if the city could provide a template for them that would better fit our community, that would be ideal. And then if they could do the data entry for us, given our limited staff, it could be challenging because we don't know the popularity of the program yet. I mean, the city of Manchester has over 40 applicants this year. The city of Waterloo has over 100. So it's just hard to gauge. The city also looked into the time frame of the displays, and the most common time frames were 1 year, which would essentially be year round if people renewed, or Memorial Day through Veterans Day, which would be about 6 months, and then presented it to the families on Veterans Day. And also some cities displayed them the month of May in honor of Memorial Day, and the month of November in honor of Veterans Day. All of these definitely had advantages and disadvantages. Ultimately, the department felt that if it was a limited time display, say the month of May and the month of November, it would create more of a special feel to the program and create more of a draw to the area, which could be good for local businesses in the area, especially if it's the month of November, which is right during the holiday season. The downfall with it is that there would be an additional cost to installing and removing the banners more than once per year. The department also took into consideration the location of displays, which kind of went hand in hand with the timing, and considered town center, the downtown district, where we already have some banner pole brackets installed. So we wouldn't have to install as many pole brackets in that area. And also Old Manchester Road, also historic Route 66, which we are currently working on promoting and revitalization effort in that area. And then also Taylor Road. Taylor Road seemed, although it had high visibility and connected the two, like downtown and Old Route 66, it didn't have enough light standards. Ultimately, the city determined that Old Manchester Road had approximately 130 light standards, and so there's room for expansion. And as far as the cost of the program, ultimately per banner, it would cost roughly $170 to $225 per banner, not including installation and removal. Since this was written, we concluded that it would probably be about $25 per banner for installation and removal. So therefore, the cost would be $200 to $250 per banner. That also doesn't include a graphic designer if we did choose to outsource the design of the banner. Therefore, all in all, the city concluded that $150 per banner would still be less than what it would cost us to run the program. However, the city could utilize the pole brackets for banners in the future, say Route 66 banners or event banners and such. And so therefore, the city covering some of that expense seemed reasonable. And then moving forward after that, the program should cost less. So ultimately, the department concluded that it would be best to do the program the month of May, the month of November, along Manchester Road between Taylor and Etherton to start off with. The cost of the program should be $150 for that time period, and that would include both months. And the honoree or the family would have the option of deciding on whether they wanted to keep the banner or renew. And if they renewed, we could lower the price to like say $50 or so, just to cover the cost of installation as opposed to the cost of the banner in addition to. And if the program is popular, we could set a cap on how many light fixtures we'd actually be using and or the time frame, which we suggested as 2 years. So one initial hanging and then a renewal. And the city would arrange the banners development, install the banners, store and maintain them. So these suggestions are just a starting point for the committee members to consider and are certainly subject to change at the committee's direction. So tonight, the department is seeking the committee's input on its recommendation regarding this program. And with that, that concludes our presentation, but myself, Mr. Cross, or Mr. Newberry are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Steve, see your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask Melanie. Melanie, a couple of weeks ago, I had forwarded some information from a vendor about street banners. I did know, and I'd forgotten to include you on that email. I just sent it to you now, just in case he did not share that with you. So I just literally just now forwarded that to you. Then you might perhaps take a look at it and see if they are competitively priced, if they can do what we'd like to do here. But it's another outlet. The cost of hanging and taking down, that cost, is that based on Glenn Gailey and his crew doing that?
That is correct. I found cost of installation and removal and estimated it per banner for other banners that we've had hung and removed, and estimated it for the number of banners. And it's hard to say how much installation will cost just because it depends on their hourly rate.
Is that comparable to what we paid Gailey at Christmas time when we hung Christmas banners?
That's where I pulled the numbers from.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Joe, I see your hand up. Go ahead. We don't hear you, Joe. We still don't hear you. Nope.
Mr. Chair, I think Mr. Farmer said maybe come back to him.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you for helping me. Deborah, go ahead, please.
So do we have the funds in the budget? And if so, what part of the budget is the funding coming from?
I don't actually have an answer to that question, given that this is pretty new to come up. I'm sure that it was not budgeted for in last year's budget. However, we can look into that. And after the first year, the program should be pretty self-sufficient. Once the pole brackets are installed, they only need to be installed once, and we can continue to reuse those. And so there would be maintenance costs associated, but not the cost of the pole brackets. Additionally, the city of Manchester charging $150, they ended up with additional funds that they put towards, thank you for your service type banners after the first year. So we can look into it further.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I
Sure,
can
go
provide
ahead.
some information to Ms. McCutcheon. Ms. McCutcheon, when this first came up about banners in the city of Wildwood, I did have a discussion with Mr. Vunich. There are funds in the budget to cover this type of expenditure. There's a line item, I don't recall exactly what it is, but there's a line item that kind of is as a catch-all for these kinds of things. So we do have money in the budget for banners. Now, these sound like a little more expensive than what we did at Christmas time. So we may be limited in the number of banners. I don't know how much the amount was, but I can say that there is some money in the budget to cover the purchase and subsequent installation of banners in the Wildwood downtown area.
Thank you, Steve. Let's go back to Joe Farmer. Steve.
You guys hear me now?
Yes, we do. Go
All
ahead, buddy.
I guess mine was maybe less of a question and just more of an offer. I'm happy to make some templated designs that are easy, and I don't know, whatever platform you guys use, whether it's Photoshop or Canva or something, you can just drag and drop pictures in. I think it might be a good idea just to kind of put a feeler out there and see what kind of a response we would get from the community in terms of just how many people might want to sign up for such a thing before we go too far down the road of figuring out how many banners and all that might be. If we have a whole bunch of people, that's great. We can do a lottery system. And if we've got a handful of people, that's cool too. I mean, I think I like it when you drive down Manchester and you see it in Manchester. The one thing I will say is, and it's probably just because of how my eye works with these things, those get a little stagnant over time if it's the same banner over and over again. I think it's a good idea to refresh those relatively recent, in a pretty quick succession, just because, hopefully there'd be a lot of service people out here that would be interested in it. And I don't think it'll take too much to drag and drop some pictures and a name change and some dates in there. It's pretty easy.
Thank you, Joe. And I agree. I mean, I think it looks really good. We're driving down Manchester Road, and we'd even get a little bit more of a bang for a buck in Wildwood because there's a lot of traffic on Manchester Road where they have those displayed, and I don't think you have a whole lot of time to look at them like you would in some other areas. Anybody else got any other questions? Anybody want? Rob, go ahead, please.
Yeah, real quickly. I love banners, and one of my questions is, do we plan this to be the first of sort of a year-round series of banners that we hang, continually refresh and so forth? I think it'd be great on Old Manchester, just because we're hoping that the Route 66 anniversary celebration draws some people, and it's just a nice thing to do, and it seems relatively inexpensive. So I'm wondering if we've given any thought to that. But before you answer, I do want to clarify that I think Old Manchester is the right spot. I think that's a consensus, and I'm wondering if we should discuss the timing. November seems like a kind of a dismal, dark month. I take your point completely about drawing people to the businesses, but I liked your suggestion of Memorial to Labor Day, just because it kind of fits better with what we're trying to accomplish with these particular banners. So if you've given any thought to that, could you speak to that, or maybe think about it for next time?
Melanie, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did discuss that, and the city of Manchester actually displays their banners for the 6 months and then presents them to the veterans. Essentially, I think part of it is that it does get more stale if it's there longer. Additionally, the banners get more weathered, and you're not as able to reuse the same banners, and so they would have to be reprinted more often, which would essentially cost the resident more. Additionally, if you have, say a limited time only window, it will draw people to that area at that specific time period, which could be great for local businesses. If they wanted to run some sort of, say, holiday special or something like that, then they would get more visibility from attracting people that way. If they're there for 6 months, the thought was just kind of that that they just become there, you know?
Well, I was counting 3 months from May 31st to Labor Day kind of thing,
Oh, okay.
right? Which is a 3-month period. That seems appropriate. People are out stirring around more during the summer, but I don't have a strong preference. I just kind of thought that seemed like a natural fit, and it's kind of the right duration.
Sure.
Anyway, that's it.
Oh, sorry, Rob. Sorry to apologize for interrupting you. Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. In answer to Mr. Rambo's question, when Joe came to me initially back in November, early December about putting up Christmas banners, and I approved that, it was with, and the direction I'd given Joe at the time was, let's see, everybody loves banners. You drive down Manchester Road, eastbound through Ellisville, through Manchester, they have banners at all times of the year, and they look very good. So those banners were relatively inexpensive. These here are a little more expensive, but those banners, I mean, the ones that we hung at Christmas time throughout town center and so forth were relatively cheap. But I suggested to him and asked him to look into, we could have banners for, all kinds of events, depending on what the council would like to do, from St. Patty's Day to Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Christmas, Turkey, Thanksgiving, whatever. I mean, we could, once we buy these banners and we take them up and down and so forth, they can be reused, but to have new banners for each cycle, or if we have a special event in the city, hang a banner for something like that. So what I asked Joe to look into was a whole series of banners that could be hung throughout the year.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Melanie.
I just also wanted to add that regarding that specific route along Old Route 66, we have discussed getting Route 66 banners in addition to that, and part of the reason, part of the thought behind just having the month-long periods was that they wouldn't detract from the Route 66 necessarily. But I think there's probably also enough light posts that you could space them out depending on the popularity of the program.
Teresa, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. And this, we may not be able to do this at all, but when I was worked with Special Olympics, we got all banners donated because the printing companies that made the banners would, for exchange, like an in-kind donation, if we used their logo in like the Gazette and had a free advertising somehow, is there any way we can get the banners printed up and donated from the companies that way?
Well, there are printers in Wildwood. Melanie, go ahead.
If I may, there are cities that do use sponsorships as far as the program's concerned, and some of it is just donating, for the good of the veterans and such. But there are also ways of say having sponsorship banners that say thank you for your service, and then might have like a logo of a business or something on it, like that could be dispersed throughout, just to lower the cost to the city or even to the residents, depending on how popular the program is. All in all, at the end of it, these banners are presented to the families, and the banners that we looked at were of a higher quality for that reason, and also so that they could be reused year after year should the resident choose to. But yes, we will continue to look into different means of sponsorships, donations, and things that, for veterans specifically, or to help promote businesses in Wildwood as well. Thank you.
So Melanie, are you looking for a motion to move forward tonight, or what are you looking for?
If you're comfortable, then yes, we're looking for a recommendation as to whether or not to move forward, and we can iron out some of those details before it goes before the council. Or if you're not comfortable with the limited information that we have, we can do some more research, get it more definitive, outline the program and bring it back before the committee if that's the direction you'd like to go.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody comfortable enough with what's presented to make the motion? Dan, are you making the motion to move forward? Rob, you're seconding it? Okay, thank you. So any other questions, any discussion on the motion? Rob, go ahead.
Good work,
Deborah, you
Melanie.
got
Keep it up. I think it's a great idea, and it's going to make the town center area lots nicer. So thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah, go ahead, please.
So I'm a little bit confused about what the motion is. Is the motion to have the department further explore and give us a better idea of the exact cost, or is it moving forward to council?
So the way I understood it would be they were going to check in on a couple other things as far as cost goes, but to bring this to council. Is that right, Dan? Is that what you, okay, that was your motion. And Rob, that was what you were seconding?
Well, my understanding was more that there's some details to be worked out, and it might need another pass through the committee with some flesh on it before we actually send it to council. So I'm not as comfortable seconding the motion to take it directly to council, because we don't even know if it's going to be May through September or November, or what it's going to be and exactly what it's going to cost. And it feels a little bit disorganized, and I wouldn't want to put Melanie in that position to be asked a lot of weird questions at council. So is it reasonable, Dan, to modify your intention a little bit and bring it through this committee one more time with final costs and stuff?
And that's fine. I think that, I mean, my personal opinion is between now and when we get to council, some of that stuff would likely be figured out. But if you guys want to have it go through us again first, it's fine with me too. But my motion was to move it to council, filling in some of those gaps on the process and the timeline of getting it there.
So thank you, Dan. And Steve, I see you, and I'll come right to you. But Melanie, I mean, without putting you on the spot, some of the questions as far as the cost, the time frame can be discussed at council. It probably would be anyway. I personally kind of like the November thing because of the Veterans Day type of target in November. But Melanie, would you be more comfortable bringing it back to committee, or would you be able to complete the so-called homework and bring it to council?
I am comfortable with what makes you comfortable. I wouldn't want to bring it to council without with anybody uncomfortable with where this is at. I would like to get solidified the dates, because I think that that's an important decision that the department doesn't necessarily make, but is more in your hands as far as the display times, although it could be discussed further at council. But if you're okay with the recommendations that we have listed, then I'm okay with moving forward and ironing out details as far as costs associated is concerned.
Okay, thank you. Steve, go ahead, and Rob, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given the discussion, the very good discussion we've had at this committee, it would be my recommendation that allow the staff to do a little more research. We have another vendor in play here that I forwarded to Joe and to Melanie. I'd like to see some costs. I think it would be advantageous to come back to council, to come back to this committee one more time before going to council. I think there's enough unanswered questions and some things to do. I think it would be better if we kept it at the committee. The mayor doesn't like to have these kinds of discussion at council. He says it's committee work. So it'd be my recommendation to this committee that it does come back here one more time if you all are comfortable with that. Thank you.
So Dan's kind of giving me a thumbs up that he's comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Not being is probably familiar with Robert's rules as I should be. Can Dan amend his own motion then? What do we need to do?
Yes, he can amend his motion.
Okay, so Dan, do you want to
consider it amended, my friends? Consider it amended.
You're making it easy. And then Rob, you want to still be the second on that then?
Yes, I'm happy to be the second. To be clear, I fully support this. I was trying to make it as streamlined as possible. Sure. And I think that's the right approach. I really do think, based on Don and some other comments, that council probably is the appropriate place to decide the time frame, like November, the date or whatever, but the rest of it we can do in committee. So thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor now for the department to kind of tighten it up and to bring some other options and answer some questions for us. Is there any other discussion or questions for the department? Okay, seeing none. All those in, Teresa, go ahead.
I guess I've just got a question about procedure. are we voting on an amendment to this, or he changed his motion?
He changed his motion. So we're just voting on one thing for the department to finish up and answer some questions for us. Thank you for clarifying that, though. Okay, so all those in favor of the motion for the department to bring some answers back for us on this, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great presentation, Melanie. Look forward to the next part. And just as a sidebar, I'm actually going to be in Waterloo this weekend, so I'm going to take a look at the ones that they have there also. Next item on our agenda is the update on the Wall That Heals application. Looks like we're probably at least a year away from this. Travis, go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the department has prepared an update and informational item for you regarding the application for the Wall That Heals. At the March meeting of the committee did support the department proceeding forward with an application for the Wall That Heals to visit the city of Wildwood in hopefully the year 2023 if we were successful with the application. In preparation for submitting the application, which opened in May of 2022, the department did contact a representative with the organization that hosts the Wall That Heals. The biggest finding that the department had when we contacted that individual is that if we were to submit for the year 2023, it would not be favorably considered by the organization, given the Wall That Heals will be in Warrenton, Missouri in 2022, this September. So that individual advised us to the city to wait till 2024 or even 2025 to submit our application to host the Wall That Heals. The individual did provide additional information and suggestions that's summarized in the memorandum. The department is not asking for any action from the committee at tonight's meeting, but did want to advise you of the update and provide information about the next step in the process, which would be for the city officials, staff to visit the Wall That Heals display in Warrenton, Missouri this coming September. Just to mark your calendars if you're interested, it's in Warrenton, Missouri from September 8th to September 11th of 2022. And again, the department's not asking for any action from the committee tonight, but if you have any questions, Mr. Pito, Mr. Cross, and myself are available to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Any questions? Teresa, you got go ahead, Teresa.
Thank you, Chair. Travis, so that it looks like it's going to take a lot of volunteers to put this together and to finalize this when we do it, and they suggest a volunteer coordinator, education outreach, site coordinator, and escort captain, and you provided us with the definitions of those. My question is, when you go to Warrenton, would it be good to identify maybe some potential people that would be doing those jobs to take with you to take a look at it so they have a better idea before they start planning, if that's the direction?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Clark. I believe that the intent of the department in conducting the visit to Warrenton, Missouri would be to gather as much information as possible from them regarding the hosting of the event, to summarize that information and provide it to this committee after the conclusion of that visit. I think that's the next first step in the city's planning process to host the event. But it's a good suggestion to consider those specific items.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the department? Okay, thanks, Teresa, and thanks, Travis, for the presentation. Appreciate it. And I think we're actually kind of lucky that it's going to be as close as it is. We're going to kind of get a real live view of it. That takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is the overview of recent development trends. This is a Typically just an FYI and no presentation from the department, but if anybody has any questions, I'm sure they'll be happy to entertain those at this point. Seeing none, okay, then we'll move on to park matters. Like I mentioned earlier, we have 7 of those. First one is the presentation of engineered plans, including updates and cost estimates for the hard court surfaces in Community Park. Melanie, go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, as you are aware, there have been some great discussions regarding the hard court area over the last several months. The hard court area in discussion will be located in the Great Meadow of Community Park and utilize the existing nearby parking and restroom facilities in order to both minimize the costs and the impervious surface area created. Over the last several months, the concept has expanded from pickleball to potentially include basketball and a tennis court in order to provide more opportunities for our residents, which led to a cost increase, which led to it being scaled back to only pickleball to keep it within the budget. During the most recent conversation at the previous meeting in May, the committee concluded that despite the additional costs, if the city was going to add this amenity, that it should be done right this time and serve more than just those interested in pickleball. Therefore, at the direction of the committee, the department contacted the park designer of the hard court area and requested that it return to the original design. Let me pull this up on my screen here. Okay, that it be returned to the original design, and which includes, I think I have all of the renditions of the hard court area. Which includes the 4 pickleball courts and then also the tennis court that has 2 half basketball courts. This should minimize the cost to the greatest possible extent and limits the disturbance as much as possible as well. Also, while managing stormwater through low impact techniques rather than a traditional basin. The plan sheets provided achieve the best possible outcomes while meeting current standards, requirements, regulations, and codes. The department included the plans in bidding form for final consideration and action by the Planning and Parks Committee. So if it's acceptable in its current form as presented, the department will begin the bidding process, which should allow the timing to correspond with the mid-year budget adjustment, which will need to be taken into consideration given the increase in cost for this hard court. Should the city council agree to move forward with it in 22. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll conclude my presentation, and we look forward to your direction with this. And if anyone has any questions, Mr. Newberry, Mr. Cross, or myself are here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. So the department is looking for like a motion to move forward with the bidding process at this point. Okay,
Sure.
Thank you. Dan, I see your hand up. Go ahead. Deborah, I see you're next.
Yeah, I'll make that motion to move forward with the bidding process. I think this is exactly what we were hoping for and looking for in regards to having different options for the residents of our community to play basketball, tennis, pickleball, whatever it is. This is way more on point than just the 4 pickleball court thing that was out there before. So thank you guys for all the hard work on this.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Before we get into the debate, do we have a second on that? Deborah, are you seconding it?
Yes, that's
You
why
are.
I have my hand up.
Okay, that is why. Okay. All right. Do you have, I saw your hand up earlier. Do you have a question or comment also, or was that just the purpose of your hand?
No, I'm going to echo what Dan said. I appreciate everybody's hard work on this. This is the request that has been by the residents is to have basketball and tennis and pickleball. So I think this is really the best choice, and I think the residents are really going to appreciate this. So thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you, Deborah. Rob, go ahead. I see your hand up. Teresa, I got you next.
Sure, mine is quick, and Joe Vunich may have a better handle on this. Melanie, I don't know how you guys are sharing all the efforts, but my question is, I saw in there that in the letter, the attachment letter, that it was decided that we should not have a retention basin, but rather use less intrusive methods. I don't recall us making that decision. I'm perfectly fine with it, except that a lot of times amended soils and so forth are not as absorptive as we need them to be, and we'd be better served in the long run with a retention basin. So I'm wondering if there was a cost element of that, and if we really looked at the effectiveness of one versus the other, because as it's already been said, we want to do this right. Can you answer that question, or is that something that I have to run past Joe?
Melanie, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That would be a better question for Mr. Vunich.
Okay.
Okay,
So that question is still on the table.
Okay, go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I jumped in there as I tend to do. I'm sorry. That question will remain on the table to be solved no matter how I vote. So with that caveat, I'm in support of this. I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I'm sure Melanie will pass that on to Joe. So, Teresa, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I also am in support of this at this point. But the question I have is, I was looking online to some other cities that had an issue with, they didn't have a hard court, and how were they going to implement it? And someplace in Florida, and I don't remember the city, but they had installed one and it was sort of like our dog park. They fenced it in, and it had locked gates, and people would get a membership and get a key, and online they would schedule when they were going to be there. And it kind of took care of a lot of people coming and not being able to get on court because there are other people there. And it was a resource for income in the city as well, to sort of pay for what they had built. Is that a possibility, or have we already looked at it and I just forgot?
Go ahead, Melanie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Clark, we have discussed it, but haven't actually researched it fully. There are other cities in the area that charge for use of their courts and such, even Manchester, where I came from, which help offset the cost of the actual court. As far as, it's tricky with the city of Wildwood, just because with the limited staff, it's harder to manage something like reservations and such. And so if we could figure out a way of automating it, that would be better. Or if it was something like the dog park, in which we just charged for a membership and then people could use it at their own, whenever it was open. However, when it comes to things like that, people might get mad that, they're not able to use it as often as they'd like to, because it's always booked when they happen to want to be there, and if we're charging for it. So there are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration. And those things can be considered in the future. But no, we don't officially have any real research dedicated to that at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Rob, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just going to point out, as Melanie, or reinforce Melanie's point, it would probably take a technology investment, hopefully a minor one, to do the scheduling piece of this. I don't support charging residents for that facility. I think it's going to be an adult-centric, unfortunately, an adult-centric facility. So we have children with wonderful playground parks. We're going to have pickleball for adults, and the only thing for the kids that are looking for something to do but don't have much money are the 2 half-court basketball. And if we wanted to charge, I sure wouldn't want to charge for that part of it. And I don't know how we would divide it up. Maybe if there's a league that establishes itself or something like that, they can pay a few bucks. But other than that, I'd be real leery of charging for this facility. I'd just rather figure out how to cut the budget somewhere else to pay for it. So that's my spiel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Steve, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to throw something out to the committee, and I'm going to be intentionally vague, but we have a plan here, and it's gone through many, many iterations, and And we all know all the discussion, and it's been good discussion to land on what we have here, which is a little bit more than just pickleball courts. It's pickleball courts and basketball courts and tennis courts. But it also comes with a price tag, some 300,000 to maybe even 400,000. And that's before we talk about lighting the courts. It's a lot of money. What if, and I'm just going to throw this out to the committee, what if there were anywhere from 3 to 5 pickleball courts, not basketball courts or tennis courts or anything like that, but if there were 3 to 5 brand new pickleball courts within town center, and you knew that that was coming, would that change your opinion a little bit? If the city did not have to spend the money and put that in, would that change anything? I'm just curious.
Could you say that again, please? Net it out. I was trying to follow, but I didn't quite catch it.
What I said is, if this committee were aware that someone else was going to bring in anywhere from 3 to 5 pickleball courts within the town center area, and that doesn't cost the city anything to build them, but there are pickleball courts that would be available to city residents, would that change your opinion in terms of us building it and spending a fair amount of money by putting them into community park? Would that change your opinion, or at least cause you to pause a little bit and wonder if we want to spend $300K or more?
Fair enough question. Deborah, you got your hand up first. Go ahead, and Rob, I got you next.
The committee has spent a lot of time and effort into this, and we don't know exactly how far the build out is going to be on the village green, and that is, like you said, in town center. I think it's important to have things for our residents to do in community park. I mean, the original master plan for the community park included this project that we're talking about now, among many other projects that are now going to the village green at a considerable amount of cost to the city, because the city already owned community park. So I really can't support holding off on the pickleball parts. I think we should just go ahead and do it. We spent a lot of time and effort on this. Our residents have been asking for it. And I think the sooner we can provide it, the better. And if we have additional ones in the village green, I just think that enhances our program that we're promoting for our residents.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair, if I may, I did not say anything about Village Green. I said in the town center, if other developers were planning developments within town center that would include anywhere from 3 to 5 new pickleball courts, would that change your opinion if part of their development included pickleball courts? So this has nothing to do with Village Green or anything that the city owns.
Thank you, Steve. Rob, go ahead, please. Dan, I got you next.
Yeah, I jumped in with a couple of top of mind thoughts. Steve, it would give me pause. 400K is a lot of money. I was reluctant to drop this in what we call our great meadow, because it's not going to be much of a meadow soon if we keep adding these kinds of amenities, but we do need an amenity. I was more focused on the younger generation, to be honest, than I was with pickleball. It may be growing in all segments of society, but I really was looking for a couple half courts, and maybe we can put in a sand volleyball or something like that. Just place for younger folks to go and recreate and enjoy themselves. And so we're giving up that. And I made myself comfortable with the price tag because of that specific issue. So I don't know, maybe if this lets us kick the can down the road a couple of years or something, and we wind up with some pickleball courts and then more later, I would change my opinion. But right now I'm kind of with Deb and Dan and the rest. We need to do something. I would hate to just have a pickleball specific facility and be done and consider ourselves done with it. So that's it.
Thank you, Rob. Dan, go ahead, please. And then Deborah, I got you next.
Yeah, I agree with what Rob said there. I think we need to attack more than just pickleball. I do think, and I kind of know, I think what Steve's talking about, if that were to materialize a bit, it would change my opinion on what the design should be. I would gear more towards what Manchester has, where they have the pickleball courts on a tennis court, so that we then have 2 tennis courts there and one that you could just make a basketball court majority of the time. So that's the only area where it would maybe change my opinion, but I do think we need to move forward with something sooner than later. And I do think that it needs to have the ability to play other sports other than just pickleball. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Again, a point of clarification is that, and again, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate, but I'm not just making stuff up. Just to throw a curveball, there are a couple real things that are in early discussions, one of which Mr. Flasher may know about, one of which none of you know about because it's brand new and only 3 people in the city know about it. And it's nothing that you've heard about yet. And again, I apologize if I'm being, as they said in one of the movies, being obtuse or being intentionally vague, but I've been asked to be intentionally vague. But there is a very real possibility, sooner rather than later, developments could occur that would include as many as 5 pickleball courts. No other kind of courts, just pickleball. However, in these developments, at least one of them, perhaps, we could actually see about making it not only pickleball, but one of them could be a pickleball/basketball type thing, where early enough in the process that potentially we could modify that. I'm just throwing something out because it is a very large price tag for this. And I understand the need. I mean, I've played pickleball. I want to play pickleball. Having it in town center is great. But, you know, Mr. Rambo has alluded to on several occasions that it's his belief that, you know, pickleball may come and go. And I've heard others say that. And I've heard others say it'll be here for a long time. I'm not an expert. I have no idea. But I would hate for us to spend a whole lot of money and find out that others are going to build it on their dime. And then we got almost an excess, because if it does become a fading fad or something along those lines, now we've spent a lot of money, you know, not to mention the meadow and all that kind of stuff. I just wanted to throw something out that if that caused you to maybe kind of slow it down a little bit and kind of see how these other things develop. If you said, well, if that's a real possibility in the near term, we might have 5 new pickleball courts in the town center area, then one of you all might say, well, let's talk about this a little bit more. And that's the only reason why I brought it up. I'm sorry if it confused the issue or anything like that, but I felt obligated to, you know, share something that might have an impact on your decision, or at least as we're going forward.
Fair enough, Steve. Deborah, go ahead. Teresa, I got you next.
Yeah, Steve, I kind of appreciate the position you're in, but I'd like to know more information. I'd like to know, is this a sure thing? And if it is, then when's it going to occur? So I need more information before I decide to go that route. If pickleball dies down, and we don't know that, but if it does, or if there's additional ones put in town center, we can always use that section of the court for basketball or something else that's relevant for our residents. So I'm going to stick with my second on the motion as is.
Thank you, Deborah. Teresa, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you said, Steve, that you brought that up. I am giving pause at this point for some of the reasons that Dr. Rambo brought up too. But if something like that came in, one of my questions, as Deb alluded to, was the timing. Everyone is saying, well, we want it soon, you know, to happen soon, and we don't want to put it off, thinking that maybe, you know, the things that we've heard, that it might be are more long-term timing. And so is this something that is short-term, I mean, as short a term timing as the community park construction and structure, putting it up would be, or is it a longer term that we'd have to wait for our residents to have something there? I just, now that you brought that up, and the $300,000, you know, that's a lot of money that we could use somewhere else if we already have the courts coming in on someone else's dime. So my question is, how long-term do you think that we're looking at?
I think, Mr. Chair, with your permission to
Yep,
answer
go ahead.
Ms. Clark's question, it would probably be a little longer than it would take if we moved forward with the courts and the hard surface courts as we're discussing here in Community Park. It probably would be done. It would take longer to do it, but it would, I don't think, given what little information, my initial conversation with the developer, that this is something that this person wants to fast track. It might be a year later than what might happen with Community Park, perhaps, but it's not 4 and 5 years down the road. It would be sooner than that, but that's still, I understand it's somewhat of a vague answer, and that's not intentionally so. It's because I don't know, but my purpose again, and again, it's not to confound the situation or confuse people or try to, because I want pickleball courts too, just as much. And this thing that we've got looking at in Community Park is pretty exciting. But I had a conversation just on Thursday of last week with a developer that I'm obligated to you all. I have a responsibility to you all to at least let you know what I know to the extent that I can, until such time as I can share more information or the mayor can share more information. So there's just something out there that might turn into additional pickleball courts in town center.
Thank you, Steve. Melanie, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I made this proposal right here would just be to move forward with the bidding process, if that's at all helpful. So we could continue to have it bid out, which will take time. And then perhaps we would have more information, but either way, it would keep this moving forward, and it's still going to be a discussion in the future as to whether or not it's something that we would have to amend the budget in order to actually complete the work, and it wouldn't be done for a while. But if we went through with the bidding process, it would keep the ball rolling. Thank you.
And Melanie's absolutely correct. The budget right now only reflects $200,000 for this type of expenditure, $100,000 this year and $100,000 next year. So there would have to be some additional funds built into the budget to cover it seems to me that the last number that I saw was somewhere in the $350,000 range, 330, 350, something like that. So there would have to be additional funds budgeted for it. But I agree, and I didn't. And if I gave that impression, I didn't mean to. Yes, we should continue. I think at least follow the process with what we have in Community Park. But I just wanted to kind of plant a seed with you all and said, if there were another alternative, we can stop this right up to the very last minute. The day before they're ready to bring out their backhoes and start digging and stuff. So yeah, we should continue, but just know that potentially there could be another alternative.
Great, thanks, Steve. Rob, can you be quick?
Yes, I can be really quick. I know it's my third time. Steve, you did your job bringing it to us. It's much appreciated. You seem apologetic, and you shouldn't be at all. But what I wanted to ask was, is this new opportunity or these new opportunities, are they both going to be public access, no charge for anybody that wants to use them, or is it going to be part of some facility that will be limited access to the general public? Because that's an important part of this.
Well, one of the developments you already know about, or I think you already know about, and that is New Community Church, which is over on Manchester Road. They're developing a site across the street, which part of it is for overflow parking, but some of it is a park. And I believe that plan has been brought before you all. But in our conversations with Pastor Kerberg and the others, we did suggest, and they were agreeable to putting in, say, a couple pickleball courts. And that would be access to the general public. Yes. The second one, which I can't talk about, but what I can say is those would be pickleball courts that also would be available to the general public. That would not be specific to that development or anything. They would be general access as well.
Okay, so I'm going to make the motion to let Melanie go
Okay,
put this out for bid?
Rob, we already have a motion.
Oh, we do. Okay, I'm sorry. Then,
Thank you. Thank you for your
then
eagerness. Deborah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate or maybe make a point based on what Mr. Cross has said. What we propose for community park is not just pickleball courts, but it's basketball courts and it's tennis courts as well.
Thank you, Deborah. So, okay, seeing no more. We have a motion on the floor to move forward with the bidding process. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. Look forward to the bidding process, Melanie. And as a side note, I'm going to say there's a development in Town Center that Mr. Farmer and I said 8 or 9 months ago was not going to put a shovel on the ground, and we're the only two people who have been right so far. So it's hard to bet on the dice. Next item on the agenda is the Parks and Recreation regulations for special events to serve alcohol. Melanie, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I don't know why I keep muting myself. I seem to keep talking. At any rate, thank you. Members of the committee, during the previous meeting, in response to a request from an organization, the department brought before you the subject of allowing alcohol in the parks as part of special events. At this meeting, the committee expressed the need to understand 4 key components prior to moving forward with this request. One was park locations considered, also hours and days for these allowances, child safety, and the permitting process. The department took these considerations seriously and looked into appropriate locations and determined that only certain locations, certain city facilities are suitable in this regard, and that was based on ample parking, shelter, or other defined meeting place, restroom accommodations, and land use in the vicinity is either park or protected from anticipated impacts by what is generally considered to be larger attended events, and concluded that Community Park, Village Green, the Al Foster Memorial Trailhead, and Bluffview Park would be appropriate locations for this. In regards to the hours in which alcohol would be allowed, the department proposes allowing weekend hours that would be limited to Friday through Saturday, 12 p.m. to 10 p.m., and Sundays 12 p.m. until 6 p.m. Weekday hours could also be considered, but the department suggests only allowed via a special permit authorized by the city council. In regards to child safety, the entity hosting the event will have to meet all state, county, and city liquor license requirements while also adhering to the permit conditions that the city would set up, which would pertain to proximity to playgrounds and other kid-friendly areas. The intent behind these would be to manage the special events with proper licensing and permitting to ensure that everybody's having fun, but not too much. Regarding the permitting process, the department would create a new permit form that focused on reasonable requirements applied to the organizer and also protections for the city, such as a deposit or some form of guarantee regarding cleanup or potential damage incurred. The permit process would include police and fire EMS input and also their participation in each submittal. All of this would be reviewed by the city attorney to ensure the city is protected. The department's requesting that the committee review each of these 4 components and discuss them to ensure that it addresses the concerns that were brought up at the last meeting. And once the department has this input, it will help shape the regulations and the permit developed for consideration by the committee, which we would develop with a city attorney, and the regulations and form would be returned and presented to the committee members for further consideration. So essentially tonight, the department is just looking for feedback on the direction that we would like to go, and if this is sufficient in regards to the concerns from the last meeting. So with that, that concludes the department's presentation. However, if there are any questions, myself, Mr. Cross, and Mr. Newberry will do our best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Any questions for the department at this point? Teresa, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have a problem with this. And there was a couple of other things that I would consider, like the percent of alcohol per volume. Is it going to be limited to beer and wine and champagne, or hard liquor going to be allowed in the parks? Do we have an increase in like insurance liability when we allow alcohol in the parks? And are we going to put up signs that say no alcohol beyond this point or that point? Keep limit it to the pavilions. Do we need a state permit? Does Wildwood need a state permit for allowing that? I don't know all of these things, so I'm asking you. Thank you.
Lots of good questions. Melanie, I'll give you the opportunity to answer them, and Steve, I got you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have answers to some of those questions. As far as policing the type of alcohol that's allowed at these events, I feel like that could be very challenging. It is something that we could put into the regulations that, say if there was a problem and say this was found at the event, we will have contact information as far as the people doing the events. That's the good thing about the special event permits, is that it allows us to take more information and creates more of a liability for the people and creates a responsibility for those that are hosting the event, for those that have filled out the application. And so as far as the increase in insurance liability, I honestly don't have an answer for that, but we can definitely look into that. As far as the limitations as to where, like if it was just limited to the pavilions, that could be set up in the permitting process, and would be in a case like, say, community park, where you have a playground that would be restricted to said pavilion so that you don't have alcohol on said playground. But it would also be part of the special event. And generally, as part of a special event permit, you limit the location of said special event, like wherever it's going to be in the park. Like that's where this would be limited to, and that would have to receive department approval in advance of said special event. And I think that covers those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Steve, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Ms. Clark, all very good questions. All, for the most part, all of them unenforceable. So let me start with a couple things that I'm going to relay an event that occurred in our parks when alcohol was involved just this past weekend. So first of all, alcohol is not allowed in our parks as we speak, nor were they allowed in the parks as of last Saturday. But there was alcohol in the park, and it led to a rather serious confrontation. So to put up signs and say only beer and wine, unenforceable, we can't do it. We don't have a police officer standing there. Only alcohol in the pavilion, unenforceable. Unless we have a police officer standing there. If a dad or a mom wants to go out into the playground and community park and push their child in the swing while they're holding a beer, it's going to happen. We've got people already now thumbing their noses at the rules that we have right now that say no alcohol in the park, or say you need to vacate at 8 p.m. when you are in the pavilion. There's people that stay long beyond that. Right now, it's unenforceable. So those are all very, very good questions. And Ms. Clark, the reason you're asking those questions is because you know that if alcohol is involved, then things happen that might not ordinarily happen. So let me relay to you an incident that occurred that I found out about yesterday and the things that I have done since. If somebody wants to reserve a rent, the community room or the council chambers, they put down a deposit. There's a cost to rent it, but there's also a deposit that will be returned if they return those facilities in the same condition that they rented them. there is no such procedure in place for renting a pavilion in one of our parks. So if they want to come in and they want to trash the place or do something, or rip a sink out of the wall or whatever, there's no financial hook to them. So Melanie brought this to my attention yesterday, what occurred on Saturday. And so I'm going to relay what occurred. I also had a conversation with the captain twice today about this very event, and I actually have the police report on my desk about this an incident, and alcohol was involved. So what occurred was a lady called, made a reservation to rent the pavilion on Saturday evening, late afternoon to evening. I don't know what the hours are, but they do it on the Parks and Rec app. And it says that you leave by 8 p.m. What occurred is that we have our city contractor, Gailey Contractors, Glenn Gailey, and one of his jobs is to go and clean up the park in the evenings after 8 p.m., after they vacate, and make sure that everything's all nice and tidy for the next day when people come to the park. He did go to this park somewhere in the 8:30, 8:45 time frame, something like that. And this party was still going on. There was alcohol because there was trash everywhere. The trash cans were full. There were beer cans, wine bottles, and other things in there. When he confronted them about that and asked them to clean it up, they got belligerent. At least one person got belligerent, questioned who he was, his authority, and so forth, said they were going to call the police. Well, at that time, Mr. Gailey himself had called the police. That ultimately did come on scene and talk to the people. They, at that point, the bride, it was the groom that became ignorant, actually, and wants to take on Glenn Gailey. Well, that's a mistake right there, but be that as it may, it got a little out of hand. The officer got it under control. They actually did pick up all the trash, and they took the trash with them. The trash cans were overflowing, but there was alcohol there when it's not allowed. It was illegal, or not illegal, but it was not allowed per our park rules. One of the things that we can do, and that I've talked to Melanie and asked her to do, and that I've asked the captain to do, number one, I want skin in the game. I want to deposit a credit card on file, so that if there is damage and we have to pay Glenn, to clean up, we can charge them back. Glenn told, I think maybe Chris, our administrative assistant, that he was done. He was not going to service our parks anymore. That was it. And I think that conversation took place yesterday. However, she kind of talked him off the ledge a little bit to where he retracted that statement. But I have a meeting with Glenn tomorrow at 2:00 to let him hear it from me, to let him know the city has his back, that we will protect him, give him a number that he is to call. If there's for him not to get involved, that's not what we pay him to do. And he shouldn't be subjected to that, nor any of his family members who also help him, which his daughter did the weekend before, and went out, and there was a minor incident, not nearly to the level that it was this past weekend. It got resolved, but I've asked the captain from this point forward to make sure that there is an officer that goes by somewhere around the 8 o'clock hour. They get a list of all the events in our pavilions throughout the parks in Wildwood, and they get that. That he will now make sure that the watch commander at the 2:00 roll call every day, that there is an event, that they're aware of it, so that the officer or officers on duty go by that particular park somewhere around 8 o'clock, either a little bit before or a little bit after, to ensure that the people are gone, and that and if they're still there, to ask them kindly to leave on time and to clean up their mess, so that becomes effective now. So he's going to take care of that, because these kind of things should be handled rightfully by the police, not by a Glenn Gailey, and certainly not by city staff. So all that, now this might be a one-off and it doesn't happen again, but there was alcohol involved. And so it may be appropriate, perhaps, if you all, and then ultimately the council decides to have alcohol at events, certain events, that's okay. But try to police about the types of alcohol, where they can go with that. We can set the rules, and Melanie did that as well. So we have 3 sets of rules now that might have either got hung today or they will tomorrow in all our parks that spells out the rules that say you do this, you do that, you leave, and so forth. And so those specific, 3, 4, 5 guidelines were laid out, laminated, and they will be hung, and there'll be 3 per pavilion. One at the restrooms, one at the reserve sign part, and then one somewhere else in the pavilion, so it is quite clear what the rules are for these adults to follow, etc. So I want you to be aware that there are problems sometimes. We want to certainly retain. Glenn Gailey does a great job cleaning up that. So I want him to hear it from me that we are going to take care of him and protect him and make sure that this, to the extent possible, it isn't going to happen again. So just wanted to share those thoughts. May or may not impact what you think about how you want to go forward with alcohol, but and how much alcohol played a part in what occurred this past Saturday night, I don't know. But the report that came to me was that there were quite a few beer cans and others in the trash that was left. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm sure everybody on this committee and the council has Mr. Gailey's back also. Teresa, go ahead, please.
Sorry. Thank you. Thanks, Steve, for bringing that up. It's always good to have all the information. I just, that if we can't trust people to follow the rules about different things like what percent of alcohol per volume, or staying in a certain place, then I don't know how we can trust that they are going to be responsible and not have too much to drink and get out of hand and belligerent, like your example. A deposit won't cover if someone gets hurt. The deposit will cover cleaning up afterwards. It's something that we don't want to do, but we could do a lot better than fixing somebody that got hurt from a fight, or a child that was even verbally abused by it. So I just, I can't support it. I cannot support it. And because when there's alcohol involved, there's always that potential for something like the other night to happen. And it only takes that one time for someone to get hurt, and that we have allowed that. Right now, we're not allowing it. And if someone got hurt, we can say, well, they were not supposed to do that. But if we say, yeah, go ahead, then what do you have to look back on? I let that happen. So that's just where I stand. And I know that people don't agree with that position, but I can't support it.
Thank you, Teresa. Melanie, remind me again what you're looking for from the committee tonight. And Deborah, I just saw your hand go up.
Thank you. This evening, we are just looking for direction as far as the suggestions that we made, to see if those would cover or address the concerns that were brought up at the last meeting. This would still need to go to the city attorney and for the legislation to be written. But we need this information in order to bring that to the city attorney in order to write said legislation. So we just wanted to make sure that we were heading in the right direction before we brought it to the city attorney.
Okay, thank you for reminding me, Melanie. Deborah, go ahead. Rob, I see you next.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Teresa. And if my memory serves, which these days not always, but I believe there was an incident at the barbecue bash that was related to alcohol some years ago as well, and someone almost really got severely hurt from that. So I agree with Teresa wholeheartedly, and I can't support this as well.
Rob, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so Melanie, again, great job. The documentation, I think you addressed all the problems. the sort of the sunset provision, it's earlier on a Sunday and so on and so forth. I think beer and maybe wine coolers and stuff, that was the level of alcohol that I was sort of considering last time we talked about this. My understanding, I see this a little differently. I see this permit process as giving the city more control of what happens, because people are going to bring in coolers of beer and, you know, bottles of whiskey and whatever the heck they want to drink in the park. Rules be damned. And if they're on the hook and they've got some financial responsibility for the damages that they incur, they might think twice about getting out of hand. But I agree with Teresa and Deb both. We don't need any of these sorts of incidents, but I don't know how to prevent them. And I think having a process is another tool in our toolbox. I'm looking at it like some guy wants to have a beer on a hot day. If there's more to it, then maybe I'm missing it. I don't know how we can sort of regulate that kind of morality. And so I'm in support of this moving forward to the full council. But my support is a little thin based on the new comments and the incidents. So I guess if I make a motion and can get a second, we can either vote it up or down, and at that point it will go to council for further debate. Is that kind of the way that would work?
No.
Don?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not, you're a couple steps ahead of everybody. So Melanie, I'll give you one more. Yeah, go ahead and explain one more time, but I think we've got a little bit before we'll get to the council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the next step in this process is that after getting feedback and guidance from the committee, we would take that information to the city attorney and we would draft regulations, legislation regarding this, and it would come back before the committee before it went to council after we had it more refined. And then we would also bring the application form so that you could have input on what we're requiring as far as the application is concerned as well, and the regulations that were set up in. It would be a more complete process when we brought it back.
Okay, so I was really getting the cart before the horse. I'm sorry for that, everybody, but I think it's worth finding out what the attorney says, and maybe let Melanie and others look into what the advantages to the city might be, given that folks are going to be carrying in coolers of beer no matter what. It would be handy to know that we're actually making a positive difference instead of just letting a bunch of yahoos come in with beer. So so I'll make a motion to go off and do that.
Okay, we have a motion to move forward, seconded by Councilmember Farber, move forward with the department's recommendation. Let me make myself clear on that. And then seconded by Councilmember Farmer. Steve, I got you next, but Rob, you are dating yourself a little bit with that wine cooler comment.
Yeah, I don't know what they're called. There's seltzer now. Somebody gave me a seltzer. I thought it was just a seltzer and it had alcohol in it, but it's so minimal you can't even tell it. So yeah, you're right. Sorry.
You said wine cooler. I'm holding you to it. Steve, go ahead. And Teresa, I see you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple items that I failed to talk about from the earlier comments when I spoke with regards to insurance. Right now, the guideline, the rule, if you will, in Wildwood is no alcohol in the pavilions. If we are going to allow that, I will need to circle back with our liability insurance carrier and say if the answer is now yes, does that change things? And right now I can't say whether it will or will not, because that changes things potentially, which could increase premiums and so forth. So I need to talk to the insurance carrier, number one. Number two, if we do not allow alcohol in the pavilions in our parks, that applies to everybody, including the city. So we'll need to make sure that the city does not bring in alcohol for either the, like the volunteers appreciation dinner or for the new resident picnic, those kinds of things. We have to follow our own rules. And so therefore, having a truck pull up where you can, get a beer like we did last year we shouldn't do that. In fact, we shouldn't have done it last year, to be honest. But so it's, you know, it would send a very, very poor message. The optics would be terrible if we're telling residents they can't, and we do. So we need to be aware of that. And I believe, from where I sit, that it is easier to regulate the rules that, let's say, if the council decides that there's no alcohol in the parks, we can handle that. This weekend's event raised some awareness, and my conversation with the captain today raised that awareness further, that we need to make sure that those pavilions, when there's an event going on, that they're patrolled a little closer, so that if the officers know there's no alcohol, they see alcohol, they can deal with it, as opposed to saying, well, make sure it's only beer or wine coolers, or Mad Dog 2020 kind of stuff. So you want to talk about dating yourself? How about that one? So I think it's easier to police it if there aren't any rules, because it'd be quite obvious. And again, if we're having an officer stop by, and that hasn't been true in the past. Officers typically have not, they do a drive-through the parks or later in the evening, especially when the parks close at 8, 9, 10 o'clock, whichever park it is, to make sure that there's nobody there, somebody's doing something that they shouldn't be. But now we're in my conversation with the captain, do things a little bit different. So I believe that we could enforce if we were to go down the road and keep the rule as is, which is no alcohol in the parks. And I also want to have a conversation with John Young, not just to draft the legislation, but I want to talk to him just in general about this whole thing, and with Melanie and Joe there, and make sure that just from a legality standpoint, not so much about drafting legislation, but what if we allow this? What does that do from his point of view in terms of setting up the city for any potential liability? So there's a number of things that we do need to look into.
Thank you, Steve. Teresa, if you could be quick, please, because we've got a few more things we got to get through today.
I can be quick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is, since like Community Park is west of 109, is concealed carry, is that allowed in the park? Because that would even add one more layer to the concern.
I'm sure that's something, I'm sure that's something we'll ask Melanie to, when she reaches out to City Attorney Young, to bring that into the discussion as well. So we have a motion on the floor to reach out to the city attorney to get his point of view and his recommendations for legislation. I see no more questions. Oh, Dan, you got a question? Go ahead.
Sorry, if this gets voted down, does that just kind of put this to rest and it's done? And if it votes yes, then we move it to the attorney? Is that the two options here?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed. Opposed.
So we have 3 opposed and 3 no. I'll tell you what, let's do a roll call vote just so I can.
Or a show of hands, but it sounded like there were more no's than yeses. So
yeah, if you don't mind, Melanie, if you don't mind, can you do a roll call vote on this just so I don't miss something?
You're muted, Melanie.
You're muted, Melanie.
Sorry. Councilmember Clark,
No.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
It's McCutcheon and no.
Oh, sorry, McCutcheon.
Okay.
My apologies.
Sorry.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
No.
Councilmember Galani is not here. Okay. And Chair Bartoni.
Yes.
Okay.
So the vote is 3-3.
Yes.
So we do not move forward with it then.
Yeah, it looks like it failed.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Next item on our agenda is a purchase for community park restroom watershed wastewater, system. I will remind everybody, we got about 20 minutes left. We got a few items here. Melanie, go ahead, please.
Okay. Members of the committee, the department has been dealing with a recent set of issues relating to community parks restroom facilities. Both grinder pumps at the park malfunctioned at the same time and required closure of the restrooms temporarily. The malfunctions were in part blockage, but also age and past damage from items being flushed down the toilets that did not belong there, caused issues. It's important to note that the service to the restroom is provided by MSC, which required the community park to be annexed into their jurisdiction and then provide a design to force effluent from the Windsor Crest subdivision's pump station and then from the facility across State 109 into Calks Creek Watershed. The park site is located within Bonham Creek Watershed, which doesn't have any type of public treatment plant located within it. Therefore, the process to treat wastewater effluent from the park is dependent on these grinder pumps at the facility and the key pump stations to the east. MSD at that time required 2 pumps to be installed. One is the primary and another as a backup. In this instance, both pumps were disabled, and although the system has a storage tank, it has limited capacity. The plumbing contractor was able to restart one of them, but the other couldn't be repaired and will need to be replaced. Given the current age and conditions of the one working unit that was there, the plumbing contractor recommended that both were replaced. He provided a bid that shows both pumps can be purchased at the cost of $9,534.60. This does not include installation. And so therefore, with installation and the removal of the existing pumps, it will exceed $10,000. And therefore, the department wanted to ensure the committee members agreed with this approach, and if so, is seeking authorization to proceed with this purchase in order to ensure that the community park restroom facilities remain functional and reliable. There is funding available in the capital improvements program for 2022. And with that, that concludes the department's presentation. However, if there are any questions, myself, Mr. Cross, or Mr. Newberry are here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Rob, go ahead, please. Teresa, I see you next.
Yes, this is a good, prudent plan, gives us some backup. It's economical. I think it's well done. And so I'll go ahead and make the motion to in the interest of time, to let Melanie move it forward. Don, you're muted.
Teresa. Thank you, Rob. We have a motion. Teresa, you're seconding it.
Yes.
You want to make comment also, or did you have your hand up to me?
No, I was just going to make the motion.
Great. Okay. Any questions on the motion for the department? Sounds like we need to do this. All those in favor of the motion to move forward with the department's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the consideration of bids for anniversary park swing replacements. Travis, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for interrupting there. I'll be as brief as I can given the time. The city administrator and the Department of Planning was contacted by a resident expressing a concern regarding the swing sets in Anniversary Park, which are currently not under any shade. The resident was hoping that the city would consider placing a shade structure over the existing swing sets. With that, the department engaged the designer of that park to inquire if that would be possible to retrofit a shade structure over the existing swing sets. The park designer returned with a response that it would not be feasible or reasonable to do such, given the age of the swing sets and just the design is not intended to have a shade structure. The same park designer did also advise the department that The design of swing sets have advanced over the years to include a integrated shade structure onto swing sets. Following that information, the park designer provided 3 bids of swing sets with shade structures, which have been summarized in the department's memorandum. After gathering that information, the department is presenting to the committee for its comment and consideration the low bid for installing new swing sets at Anniversary Park with an integrated shade structure from Fry Recreation Equipment for $15,615. Again, the department is presenting this low bid to the committee for its consideration and direction at tonight's meeting. And the department will be available for any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. And I mean, before I see Joe's hand up, and I'll get to you in a second, Joe, but I just want to ask you, Travis, and this might be an unfair question for you, but the range in the bids is pretty significant. I mean, like double and then 4 times as much. Is there any rhyme or reason to that?
I was struck by that as well, Mr. Chair. I was hoping to talk with Ken Keitel, the park designer, today to perhaps get an explanation. I wasn't able to get a hold of him. I would note that the Fry, the low bid, is a local provider who has worked with the city in the past. I don't know if the shipping costs relate to the lower bid or not, but apologize. I don't have an answer for an explanation for the range in bids.
Oh, no, fair enough. Joe, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for those of you that haven't hung out at Anniversary Park, it is often like swinging on the surface of the sun. There is no shade anywhere over there. So I was also a little confused by the disparity in pricing. So I know that we always are trying to do things and save money and stuff. I want to make sure that, you know, the $15,000 is going to be a good investment instead of whatever the middle price is or whatever. Like, let's just make sure we're getting the right stuff, but we need to have something over there for sure.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, if I remember right, and Deborah can shake her head if I'm either way on this, but I think over at the Moore 5 Park, there's shade structure for the swing sets, and over there isn't there? Yeah, and I mean, that place is crowded. You know, they've done such a great job there. Teresa, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is just for the swings and shade over the top, right? I mean, I can't even imagine $57,000 for a swing set with a shade over the top. I mean, I come from a different world where, you know, we went barefoot on rocks and there was no shade. You went under the tree. So, but I'm looking at this like $15,000 sounds more reasonable to me for a swing set with a shade over it than I can't imagine what kind of swing set you get for $57,000. I don't think we need a $57,000 swing set. Just a comment.
Thank you, Teresa. And yeah, kind of the rope and a tire and a wine cooler afterwards where I grew up. Deborah, go ahead.
Yeah, 2 things. One, if this is a newer version of the swing set, how long has the current swings been in Anniversary Park? So that would be question number 1. But I do wholeheartedly support this. I also question the disparity between the 3 different bids. But if we have worked with Fry before, I think our park designer knows his job well, and I've never disappointed the city. So I would definitely support going with Fry if that's an option. But I can tell you from the Green Pines Park that shade is very important. The parents appreciate it, especially with the toddlers and the preschoolers, the younger kids. It's greatly appreciated. So I would wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you, Deborah. Travis, do you know the age of Anniversary Park?
Yes, sir. The park is named after the city's 10th anniversary. So it was constructed in 2005, 2006 is when it was completed. So 15 years in place.
Thank you. Steve, I see your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I was going to answer the question. That was our first park, I believe, anniversary. So yeah, it's close to 17 years old. With regards to the cost, I think the $57,000 was somebody that really doesn't want to do the job and threw a number out and figured if we were dumb enough to bite, they'll whatever. The $16,000 is reasonable compared to if you compare that to when we built Green Pines Park, and that's the newest park. Some of you who were on council at the time may recall that it came up about whether we were going to put a shade structure over the swings at that time. And if memory serves me, it was about $5,000. And we had a council member that was going crazy about that we were going to spend $5,000 as opposed to letting our kids burn up in the sun. So ultimately, we made the right decision. You all made the right decision to put shade structures in Anniversary Park. But if you figure, let's just say, that number is reasonable, $5,000 for a shade structure, $10,000. We're only talking 4 swings here. We're talking 2 regular swings and 2, accessible swings for folks. It's only 4 swings and 4 posts. So the amount is reasonable. I think it still bears circling back to Ken just to find out at least the second bid to make sure what it's made out of and so forth. 57, I think you just put it out of your mind because that's somebody that either doesn't know how to work a calculator or is just crazy. So I think the 16,000, at least in comparison to what we did with Green Pines, is probably reasonable. But let's look at that second bid just to be sure.
Thank you. Travis, the agenda's got you looking for authorization to proceed forward, or are you comfortable if we just do a little bit more homework just on that second bid first?
I think that would be acceptable to the department. That's what the committee desires.
Okay, Rob, I see your hand up, and Joe, I see you next.
Yeah, I was just going to see if there was a way to, it sounds like there's a need for this. It'll be, we could probably get it in place in pretty short order. I'm wondering if there's a way to short circuit the review of the disparity in bids and move forward. Is there a way to do that, or do we have to wait till next month to get clarity and then vote?
I think it would probably be better to get clarity and then vote on it, just so we're not voting on something and find out there's some sort of a rattlesnake in the bag we're not aware of.
Yeah, so this is the critical path. So Travis, can you give me a sort of a time frame for when we can make this happen? If the guy's local, he might have the swing set local and it happen in a couple of weeks after we approve it. Am I understanding that right?
Dr. Rambo, I do know for sure that it's a local firm. I don't know how quickly the time frame could move forward for construction.
Okay, well, I mean, it's not urgent. It's just I hate that now I'm going to be having nightmares about little kids burning up on the surface of the sun. So thanks, Joe.
Okay, Joe, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think I'm just wondering if it's possible, since we're going to go back and just get a little bit more information. While I grew up in the days of the metal slides with no covers and, scars to show for that. I know my kids who are a little old for the park now didn't always love a lot of the stuff over there because it was pretty hot in the summer. So if we're going to get some more information, it may be worthwhile just to see if it's possible to get some type of a shade, whatever that sail stuff is that they put up there, over the rest of the playground. I mean, it's not particularly large, and you can throw a couple posts up with the thing on there. If it's not prohibitively expensive, it might be worth doing. If it is, then we just stick with the swings.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Teresa?
Yeah, just to throw something out there, I've been over there a number of times to look at the creek, but I can't remember looking too much at the swing set. Is there, if there's a need for shade in the area, should we be thinking about planting some more trees around that are fast growing and will provide more shade for the area?
Teresa, I like your thought, but I want to stick on the agenda on this topic, and maybe we can bring that up at a different time. But don't disagree that that might be a good idea. So we would.
Do you
I
need
guess
a
we
motion to get more
We do need a
information?
motion to move forward with, for the department to just investigate the difference between the two bids. And Travis, if you could get lead times from both of them also, that would be great. So I see, Joe, are you making that motion?
Yeah.
I was making that motion. I see a second from Dan. So that's great. Any discussion, any other more questions on that? So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Thank you, everyone. That takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is the tree removal trimming program for Glencoe Park. Melanie, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I will try and keep this brief as well. Given the level of storm damage over the last year, as well as ongoing issues with older and invasive species in Glencoe City Park, the Department of Planning asked its current tree service contractor, Omni, to provide an estimate for the extensive cleanup of that park. The city certified park inspector noted that these issues should be addressed in order to ensure the safety of visitors to the park. Because Omni Tree Service has an existing contract with the city, they would be considered to be the preferred service provider. And so the department contacted them for a bid. They estimated it would be $10,440 to address those issues identified in the inspection report. So accordingly, the department is seeking authorization to proceed with this tree work in order to ensure the facility will remain functional and safe for its visitors. And with that, that concludes the department's presentation. However, myself, Mr. Cross, or Mr. Newberry are here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Anybody want to make the motion for the department to move forward? Joe, you're making the motion. Dan, you're seconding it. Thank you. Any questions or comments for the department? Rob, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I had some technical questions. I'm just wondering who the right person at City Hall is to talk to. I normally try to start with Rick Brown. Who's handling this? Is it Melanie or is it Travis?
I am handling the report this evening. I have limited information. Again, Mr. Vunich and Mr. Brown are both far more informative, but neither are here. So I will do my best to answer the questions.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't want to take up any more time. We're at the end, and I do have some questions, but I'm ready to move forward.
Okay,
so.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you. Joe, go ahead, please. Joe, you are muted.
Quick alternate question. So if there is damage to trees that I guess are city trees, whether they're in the right of way or in the parks or whatever, that's up to the city, right? We have somebody that goes out and fixes that stuff if branches and things come down. Okay, that's it. Cool.
Okay. Any other questions for the department? So we have a motion on the floor to move forward with the department's recommendation. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you very much. That brings us to the next two items on our agenda, which is update of the in-person virtual recreation programs and the facility reservations. Once again, these are typically FYI items. Does anybody have any questions or comments for the department? All right, seeing none, we are getting done right on time, and I appreciate everybody kind of hurrying it up towards the end. We had some really good discussion though. Any other final comments? With that, I'll just make one. Travis, I think Teresa did bring up a good point on the anniversary park. If part of your research, you don't mind just seeing if some fast growing trees or would be an idea of in the future as well. But other than that, Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just hearkening back to the discussion about alcohol in the parks. I'm fine with leaving it the way it is, it seems like it's more enforceable, as Steve said. I'm wondering if there's any advantage to circling back with our attorney and asking him, any more questions, because my understanding of the origin of this was that it was from, there were some requests from organizations to be able to have, maybe even sell beer in the parks at certain events. And we kind of lost track of that when we were having the discussion, but it seemed reasonable to let charities do this. If it's dead, it's dead, but it'd be nice to get to have some further clarity. Steve, do you think that's reasonable?
Yeah,
Because you don't have anything
I-
else to do probably tomorrow, so.
I think dead is dead, and it is dead. But Steve, I don't know if we can. I mean, we can't go to the attorney with a request for legislation because we voted it down. But I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, but there's some enforcement questions and some other questions, and it'd be nice to have a clarification discussion, I think.
No, Dr. Rambo, I agree. And I think it is worthwhile. Just this might got it voted down tonight, or it was a draw and therefore it didn't and failed. But I think it is good information to know, because it may get resurrected sometime in the future. So yes, we'll circle back with the city attorney. I'm informing him of the discussion tonight and the results of the vote, and find out, are there other things that we need to consider for the future? I'll do that.
I think that's great.
And Steve, just to help me understand, if it's more of an enforcement thing, would that be for public safety to discuss?
Well, if it's an enforcement thing, that's the police. I mean, this doesn't need to go to the Board of Public Safety. The police are the ones that patrol our parks, and they're the ones that enforce the closing time and so forth. We just added an additional thing where I've asked for the person on to show up around 8 o'clock, and then they'll be, they're on until 4 in the morning or 6 or whatever. So it's just part of their passing through the parks anyway. So that enforcement of that is entirely up on our police force. It's not Glenn Gailey, and it's not city staff or anybody else. It's entirely the police.
Okay, fair enough. Deborah, go ahead, and then Teresa, I got you, and we'll try to wrap it up.
Yeah, I was on here for another reason, but I agree with you, John. I mean, it's a board of safety issue if we're going to come back and address policy in regards of how to keep our residents safe. So I agree with you on that. But my other, I guess, is basically a question for everybody. Can we go back to in-person meetings versus Zoom? Is there a reason we're continuing on Zoom?
I mean, I don't think there is necessarily a reason. I mean, I've always tried to default to whatever was easiest for staff. I'll reach out to Joe next week and Steve and just see and get their take on it. But if they're comfortable with it, I'd be comfortable with it, and we can go back to that and do with what some of the other departments are doing. Also, is just you can have in person and virtual being an option. So, but I'll check into it for you, Deborah. Teresa?
Well, I can actually share information right now.
Sure.
If with the chair's permission.
Go ahead.
When we kind of got out of COVID, the guidance that I was giving to each of the chairs of the department is that it is up to each individual. I'm sorry, the chair of the committee. It's up to each individual committee how they want to meet. Some committees have already asked their committee members, and they have voted to remain virtual like this. They've gotten used to it. It's efficient. And there have reasons. There are other committees that they decide they wanted to meet in person. Now, in-person meetings at the present time all need to be held in the council chambers, simply because the technology to have a hybrid, which is, it still needs to be Zoom. So if we're in person, the chair always has to be there. It cannot be a virtual meeting without the chair. That's one of the rules. So the chair always has to be in person. But we also need the technology that exists in the council chambers and does not exist in the community room right now to do that. So that requires someone from staff to be there. Someone's taking minutes, and someone's also running the technology side of things. But it is entirely up to each committee So if the committee votes and the chair and the committee decides they want to meet in person, it's entirely up to you. City Hall is wide open now. However, I've had 2 staff members out for the last week with COVID, and one of them is still testing positive 8 days from the first time. And so it's still around. I just had one staff member come back today for the first time after being out for a week with COVID. And I said, I got another one that's been out for a week and going on a week and a half now. So it's up to you all. If you want to meet in person, we will accommodate you. Our job as staff is to serve you all. So we can do that it's up to you all.
Okay.
Entirely.
Thank you, Steve. And I'll reach out to everybody and get everybody's take off the record. Melanie, go ahead. And then Teresa.
That's actually what I was going to offer. I was going to offer to pull the board if you'd like, and that way we could put it on the agenda for discussion at the next meeting at your direction.
Okay. Teresa, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that last night was a very good town hall put on by St. Louis County Councilman Mark Harder and on safety. And he mentioned they mentioned many different issues that were related to parks and park safety and things that go on in the parks. And I don't know if he has it on YouTube. He had someone there videotaping the whole thing, but if we can get that, I think it would be really helpful for us to hear the things that are going on in different parks and different municipalities.
With the chair's permission, with the committee's permission, I'll go ahead and I'll reach out to Council Member Harder. I did have a conversation with the captain today. He did give me a download, if you will, of what occurred last night. There were some 40 or 50 folks in attendance there. Councilmember Clark being one of them, asked a lot of good questions, as I understand it. But if it was recorded, I'll check with the councilman tomorrow and ask him if it is available, and then see how we get a copy of it. So I'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Teresa, for bringing that to our attention. I don't see anything else. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, made by Councilmember Flasher, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. Non-debatable. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, everybody, for your evening and going over a little bit of time. And since we won't see each other, everybody have a happy and safe holiday 4th of July weekend.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.